What is up, guys? This is Pete Characters Clark, and welcome to episode 84 of the Carrot Poker podcast. Parrot Poker. I think that's a good name, Simon, for the podcast.
Yeah, that sounds like you.
Yeah, just get the student to copy everything I say like a parrot over and over again. Yep, parroters. Anyway, Simon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks to you.
Simon is my one of my longest term students now, right? Are you my longest standing student? Like, you've survived my storms of poker anger for the longest now out of everyone?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit more than 18 months.
Wow.
We started in February last year.
You do realize that this is the point in the relationship where it stops working for itself and you have to put the work in
Yeah,
to make it still function.
yeah, honeymoon is over.
The spark is gone. That's right. So now that we start to see all the bad aspects of one another, where are you at with poker? What's been happening?
Right now I'm playing 100 NL Zoom regularly. I'm slightly shot taking 200 Zoom when it's really soft. But I'm mostly working on improving mostly my mental game at 100 Zoom. I think my technical game is not far to be on par, but my mental game is far from being the at par for even 100 Zoom, I think.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about the mental game soon, because obviously I want to use today as a chance to celebrate the fact that I'm done with poker therapy and it's now available, and you've bought your copy. I think you were my 17th sale or something. You were asking me
Hmm.
if you were my first last night. I'm afraid
Yeah,
not. You have to be a bit quicker than that. Because you're Eastern time as well, you're still in bed when I'm getting my first sales. So
yeah.
yeah, but we'll talk a little bit about your mental game issues soon. But let's talk a little bit about your journey first of all, so people get a bit more background on my longest term student. So where were you poker wise when we first started, and what were the initial struggles like?
When we started, it was 6 months that I was like playing a bit more seriously. Before that, I was playing mostly live cash games at the local casino. Maybe once a month. I was a huge whale and was really lucky. Turned up like $40 and 5K in tournaments. And then I started to play 10 NL Zoom, 5 NL Zoom, 5 NL Zoom, yeah, and because I wanted to really improve, but I had too many leagues, and then I decided to hire a coach, which was you, and we've been working on since then.
Thanks for refreshing my memory. Yeah, good, cool. So I remember when we first started, it was always like you were obsessed with GTO, and I was like, look at these massive mistakes you're making, and you were like, but I love GTO, and we had that
Yeah,
problem of like, you're a mathematician, right? Tell the audience a little bit about your various degrees and your background.
yeah, I have a master. I have a bachelor in pure mathematics. I have a master in financial mathematics, and I did start two PhD actually, one in financial engineering, but it was during the time of the 2008 crisis, credit crisis. Don't know if you're aware, but it was like a
Yeah,
huge blunders, and I didn't really like the research, so I went working in that field. And then, yeah, that's pretty much sums for my relevant degrees for that. But before that, in 2005, I played a bit of online poker, but really didn't like the all all the of exploitative poker. I wasn't really interested about that at all, actually. So didn't catch up to it. Just played poker for fun. Then when the GTO revolutions went by, game theory is a branch of mathematics. It's not what I used to specialize in, but it's an interesting topic, and it appealed more to me as a to improve as a poker player than oh raise when you have two pairs and fold when you get check raise on the river, and
Yeah.
just having those, I guess, silly rules that doesn't really make sense actually.
So
And
humans are kind of boring, aren't they? Like they just do all the same things all the time, for no particular reason. Like they're just so programmed to not think outside of the box. I think that's what's so boring about it. And you can say that in game theory, a lot of the rules that I might teach a student at 10 an L or 25 an L or something don't really make a lot of sense, and they maybe constitute really horrific play, logically speaking. But it's amazing how reliable population reads can be for regs at lower stakes. It's just that I think you have to find a balance, because if you only learn like a parrot, thematically for this podcast, the Parrot Poker Podcast,
yeah,
if you only learn how to repeat like some coaches' general maxims about how to exploit people in a certain spot, you do end up moving up in stakes, and then you're just doing things because that's what you've been told to do, and this magical code just works. It's like when I put like a combination lock, when I like put the code in, I'm going to open up my garage, right? And then I don't really envision how all the little pieces are actually fitting together and how the lock operate, like how the mechanism is operating. I just know that it works, and I don't need to know how the actual operation, the mechanics of the lock work. But when you play poker, you do kind of need to learn while you're exploiting the physics of what's going on, as it were. You need to know, like, why do these exploitative plays work? And that's why that's why we've always worked on exploiting in relation to the GTO and not just exploiting in its own vacuum. It's quite dangerous, I think, when you just like teach exploitative rules far away from the GTO launchpad. So yeah, and that's what's more appealing to me, because I found that now it makes more sense to want to exploit, because I know I think I know what the equilibrium is in certain spot, and I try to understand what people's doing wrong with that, and then we add some population reads, and then we can play better against populations by doing so. But it makes much more sense to me than not knowing what the equilibrium is, and not just wanting to know what's the equilibrium and just making like exploit. Yeah, I think it's really good to have that relevance. So what is the mental game all about? Like, I mean, I've written a book on it, so I kind of know what I think it's all about. But why do you think mental game issues are such a problem for everyone?
Well, I think it's for me. I think it's because I'm too much result oriented. And yeah, is that? Let me just think for a second. Is it the?
That's a type of misfire that I actually write about in Poker Therapy, right? The results orientation. Let me find that bit in the PDF, because obviously I'm going to shamelessly plug the book a fair bit in this podcast, as you can imagine. Not to you, because you've already bought it, but I really should have given you a free copy since you were coming on the podcast. That's pretty shitty of me. But
that's okay.
You can't have your money back, though.
But well, mental game is a big problem, because in most of the games right now, I think it's the win rate are so low that every time you play suboptimally, you're gonna end up losing, and I think it's gonna accumulate over time. Actually, and also we're all result oriented. So if we don't have the result orientations, mental game leagues, but we're playing badly and we end up losing, we might end up having the result oriented mental games leagues eventually.
It's like a disease. It's like a common cold in there that you catch just by running bad for a week or two. Obviously you've started reading Poker Therapy. How far have you got out of the 174 pages?
I think I'm at the beginning of a second chapter.
Okay.
So we're starting with the misfire.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what a misfire actually is. So misfire is either in-game or shortly after in-game human natural response, where there is a bad interpretation of a poker trigger or poker stimulus. I know you love your theoretical definitions from that journey we had in the car
Yeah.
for 5 hours, where you were telling me how you wanted everything defined like a textbook. So there's my definition of my own term, misfire, and you can't say it's wrong because it's my term and I made it up. So that's what a misfire is to me. It's like a human process that is supposed to happen. It's learned and trained, and is subconsciously ingrained via many, many years of successful adaptation on Earth and successful evolution in our genetics. So, for example, what we're talking about there is praise and scorn, like results orientedness, right? So, you know, I'll quote here: during our first few years in the world, we have little to no moral autonomy. We rely on our parents for guidance as to which actions are permissible and which are not. When we exhibit behaviour that our parents consider positive, they praise us. When we put the cat in the tumble dryer, they scorn us. I did that when I was a kid, by the way. That's why I chose that example. Poor Patra. Patra was a boy, even though he was like, because his mother was called Cleo, you see. So Cleopatra. Everyone's like, you have a boy cat called Patra? But yeah, I digress. So I put Patra in the tumble dryer, much to his dismay. And obviously got into trouble. But the point is that, you know, I'll paraphrase here, like, we're forming these automated habits through, and we're learning which habits to form based on whether good things or bad things happen to us. Our parents are like really reliable administrators of praise and scorn. They will, if they're good parents, they will administer scorn when we do badly and praise when we do well, and we'll learn our way in the world, and we'll learn which actions are permissible or viable based on that. The thing is that when we start learning poker, we look to results to be our guidance, just like we do look to our parents or, you know, teachers or, you know, superiors, bosses in life, but we don't get the same reliable administering of praise and scorn. There's that old quote about poker being the master that beats you for bringing the mail and rewarding you for shitting on the carpet or something. I can't quite remember, but there's an analogy, an old analogy in there somewhere. So yeah, this results oriented thing that you're talking about, it's basically we look to results to give us causal feedback, to give us either positive reinforcement or to scorn us, to give us negative reinforcement. If we get positive reinforcement, we'll try and do that thing more, we'll feel great about it, we'll keep doing it, we'll form a habit. If we get negative reinforcement, we'll form a habit to avoid that thing. Just like I no longer will put a cat in a tumble dryer because I got into trouble lots for it. Not lots, happened once, but I would have got into trouble multiple times had I done it multiple times, and it would have formed a habit. Once was enough. But yeah, like, this is the thing, but poker just hands it out randomly. It's like, oh, you made a terrible play, here, have 2 stacks. Oh, you followed the book and you played completely GTO, you got stacked. And because of that, it's very, very easy to lose your mind because of that tendency for us to look to results to validate what we're doing. And we can't help it. We go back to results time and time again. Do you ever feel like you know consciously the results aren't important, but you just cannot possibly stop looking to them for reinforcement?
But well, every time, all the time actually. Even though I understand the variance, I haven't done much statistical, but I understand like variance. It's an easy concept in mathematics. I was telling you that every week's many times I was chasing loss because I wanted to show you that I was winning, because it was my way to show you improvements, even though I understand that it's not even related to how I play.
But you've got a lot better, right? Like I remember back in the day when a lesson would begin with, right, Simon, let's see the homework you did, and you'd be like, well, you know, I found out that actually I was losing because I was playing too low, so I moved up in stakes, and now I think everything's going to be fine. Or you were always changing. It's I'll actually jump down to the end of the book, which is like the last chapter is about roadblocks. You've not got to it yet. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but one of the roadblocks that reminds me of those times in our coaching when you were like being so moved by the results that you were just changing your mind all the time on what you were going to do. This is called fickleness, right? Fickle meaning like, you know, going very susceptible to changing affection or loyalty, basically, due to external circumstances. So fickle poker players are poker players who want results straight away, look to results to guide them, and when things go wrong, even slightly, they change their approach. And variance, of course, is handing out praise and scorn randomly So the fickle player starts doing something different, like playing poker in the kitchen, and for some reason runs good, due to variance runs good that day, and then literally the fickle student will be like, well, yeah, I figured out that, if I play poker in the kitchen, things are a lot better, so I'm going to start doing that a lot. And I'll be like, oh my god. So I'm not saying you were on that level when we started, but you were jumping around a hell of a lot. Tournaments, cash, moving up, moving down, back to 2NL, up to 25NL. And that didn't help you, right? That was like self-sabotage.
Yeah, actually, I had a fair amount of good result in live tournaments and live cash game, and it was way easier. So I lost a lot of times playing at the casino instead of working on my game. I think it was like an avoidance.
Yeah, and also just chasing the positive reinforcement. You were getting praise from your poker parent for going and playing live because Variance, your parent, was just in a good mood that day and was like, okay, son, yeah, here you go. Here's some positive reinforcement for playing this pointless game that's going to like waste your whole life. And now your opinion on live is like you can't stand it, right?
Yeah, I can't stand. Actually, I won a package for the Bahamas, and I don't even want to. Well, actually, I don't like suns and I don't like the suns and pool and beach, so it doesn't help. But I'm kind of a bit tilted about having to go to the Bahamas playing a live tournament.
So you hate all the nice, bright, shiny things in life.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't play poker for the money. I just play for. Actually, I do think that I do love more the technical part of the game than actual playing. But since you have to prove to yourself that you can win at a game, I guess I end up playing.
Absolutely. So back to this fickleness cycle in poker. The idea is that we start off with negative variance. This is like stage 1, and this comes from page 138. If you've got the book, kids, turn to page 138 now. So negative variance is your first trigger, and that causes you to want to change something because you're so results oriented. Not you personally, but maybe you personally, but also you in general. So that causes a massive change to your approach. And now, when you make a massive change to your approach, there's 2 different possibilities. Either you can run bad again, and that's random, and if you run bad again, you end up changing your approach again. You pick up a new thing. I use the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle. What's better if you can't complete the jigsaw? Is it better to trash it and start a new jigsaw, or just replace some of the pieces that are wrong? Clearly it's the latter, but the fickle player wants to start a new jigsaw every time he gets stuck, and that is like the problem. The other thing that can happen after you make this giant change to your approach is that you can encounter positive variance. That's the praise, that's the nice parent, the good cop. If the good cop comes and gives you the praise and makes you win that day, you're likely to have the delusion that that approach is working, and then inevitably at some point you have negative variance again, and you change your beloved approach into something else, and it's like the flavor of the week. Every week there's a new flavor and you go nowhere. So if you let yourself get feedback from variance and become obsessed with variance, you will change things without even knowing it, because that's what you're programmed to do as a human being. You're programmed to be malleable and to adapt all of your approaches to things based on the feedback you get, whether it's good or bad, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. So yeah, I think that fickleness cycle is a particularly relevant part of the book for, yourself maybe a year ago, because we commonly experienced that you were just doing things based on what was currently working. Whereas now, let's talk about what our approach in coaching is now, and it's a bit more permanent, right? It's a bit more like, what's the word? Consistent, what we're doing now.
But now we're working like 2 times per week. Before the retreat, I wanted to go a bit more on my own because
Should we just talk about what you mean by that? What is the retreat?
The retreat is the gathering that you arrange to teach us about poker with some of your students, and so we work on many technical aspects of the games. Is that what you want me to explain?
Yeah, just so they know what you're talking about when you say retreat. I thought it was maybe a bit ambiguous, but yeah, that was fun. That was a good weekend. We got a house in the countryside, and we did a load of coaching, and also just did loads of sweats, and I'm sure some of the guys from that are listening. Is this a good point to just have a quick interlude to talk about Montreal?
Yeah. Yeah. We're actually organizing the same retreat in Montreal. Uh, it's gonna be close to Montreal, actually, probably in the surroundings. It's gonna be It's supposed to be 23 of March till the 25th, I think. Yeah, let me just check
Sounds fine.
rapidly.
I'm sure I can make it.
Yeah,
Well, I'm kind of running it,
yeah.
so hopefully I can make it.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a lot of fun actually. It's gonna be my second time I do it. Yeah, I think it's gonna be again very useful. Useful, even though I work with you 2 times per week right now. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, a lot of learning. I encourage everyone to do it. It's kind of pretty cheap for the value you get, right? In that.
Yeah. So the last one we priced at £800 per person for accommodation and teaching. I don't think we've exactly decided what the pricing strategy is for this one, but
Yeah,
we're gonna make it very affordable. And if you bought the same amount of private coaching online, you would get probably less hours for the price, and you wouldn't get a nice stay in the countryside with a bunch of guys and beers and home games and sweats and just all the good bonding community stuff that comes with a bunch of poker
yeah,
nerds going out into the countryside with nothing else to do. So
yeah,
yeah, cool. Anyway, back to since the retreat that we did a couple of weeks ago,
yeah.
you wanted to do coaching more regularly. That had inspired a bunch of people, obviously, to take their game more seriously. And we have been doing 2 lessons a week. But what's changed in in your consistency? Like, what consistent good habits do you think you've got now post poker retreat that you didn't have before?
Well, I'm defensively less result oriented. I study much more. Well, actually, being less result oriented make me feel that I don't need to prove that I'm winning. So it gives me more time to study, try to work on my mental games. Uh, it gave me a much clearer pathway to improvement than before, actually.
Yeah.
Before it was like mostly like, okay, we're gonna work on some things this week. Uh, then I'm go back to play maybe 30 hours during the week with my current job, and then try to, and maybe not having a long-term goals more than because I was too much result oriented. I
Hmm.
wanted to prove that I could win.
And now, have you given up the businesses that you were running for poker at the moment, or are you still running some of them?
No, I'm still running some of them. I have more employees right now, so I can focus more on poker. Uh, yeah, that.
Delegation
So
is always good. Here's a quote from Poker Therapy about enduring variance. To be a great boxer, you have to get punched. To be a great poker player, you have to get stacked. And
yeah,
yeah, it's actually being able to take a stacking, right? Like you could take a punch if you were like a fighter or something. I think that's like a really key thing. Like, because if you can't take a couple of stackings in a row, then you have no chance, because you're inevitably always going to have sessions where you get stacked 3 times right at the start. That kind of stuff is going to happen. And what separates a guy like you who's really working on their mental game seriously to someone who neglects their mental game when it comes to this results orientation is, like, you're going to reach the point where you can take that and maybe still play like your B minus game. Whereas when a player that doesn't work on their mental game gets stacked 3 times at the start of the session, it could just be E game or F game or H
yeah,
game or something like really terrible. And I think that's like really key. Like, a lot of regs are not winners because even though they've got the technical ability, their worst game is too bad and they play their worst game too often.
yeah.
And that's why working on a book like Poker Therapy is really, really important. And there's obviously other things you can do for your mental game: drills, exercises. You've been keeping this is something I recommend in the book, but you've been keeping a kind of spreadsheet, right, to keep yourself accountable. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's been in that?
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet. Now we are mostly working on 20-minute sessions and 30-minute studies. So in each session, on each line, I wrote the date, how many table that I play. I rate my uh, emotional detachment. The emotional detachment is like maybe not caring about the actual money or the result, actually. Giving myself the right amount of pressure, so enough pressure, so I strive to be great at the game, but not that much pressure that it's become negative and impact my game. So not really having the pressure to want to play well and not actually winning money. So not over bluffing spots where I just want to win the pot and maybe just clicking button, but instead of thinking, okay, I might not love this combo. So now we're working also on time bank usage. I found that I have a ADHD and I tend to actually not use my brain usually. Well, before I tend to not use my brain and just click buttons. So we're having the time bank usage to just think more during the ends. I think my out of game analysis is way better than my in-game analysis, and we're having also a lifestyle balance. I wanted to have more balance in my lifestyle, not only having poker and the job, managing volume, also not playing like 10-hour sessions from 9 p.m. till 5 a.m. because I was losing 7 buy-ins at the
Yeah.
beginnings.
Sounds minus EV to play 10-hour sessions because you started off badly. Then I remember you describing to me that night that you played for absolutely ages because you started
Yeah,
off down 6 buy-ins and then you went to bed at 8 in the morning. Your girlfriend's getting up for work. She's like, "So what are you
yeah,
doing? Like, have you not been to bed yet?" And you're like, "I broke even. It's okay. I
yeah,
broke even. Fall asleep
yeah,
instantly." Just like that's not the life of the poker player. There, that is someone who is variance's bitch, right? So we don't want to
yeah.
be variance's bitch. That's what we need to avoid at all costs. So guys, if you want poker therapy, like if you want to read the book and get your own poker therapy, then head over to carrotcorner.com. You can find it there. You can also go to my store that I will link at the bottom of the YouTube edition of this. And yeah, let me know what you think if you do get it. admin@carrotcorner.com. Add me on Skype as characters. Let me know. So you've started. Obviously, the stuff we've been doing in coaching, some of it's derivative of the book. Other stuff is just sort of the ideas that we've had together. But that organization has really helped. Like the first thing that you need to do if you have mental game leaks is get together a spreadsheet or a table or something that lists what they actually are. For each one, what I do in poker therapy is I use a misfire diagram to describe the misfire, the type of tilt or mental game affliction. And there's always a trigger. So if we were to use your chasing losses one, the trigger would be a session that starts out really badly, right? That would be like your trigger. Then we would have an interpretation. This is the way your subconscious views the spot. It's usually the way it's been trained to view similar triggers in life. So every poker trigger has a real life trigger, like when you get screwed over by a bad river card in 3 outered, that's like, I don't know, losing your wallet or having something stolen or like feeling like you've been robbed in real life or something. And you react similarly, anger, fury, indignant, like want your money back, etc., want to rectify it. So every interpretation we have of the poker world comes from a real life equivalent. And for you, I guess, Simon, with your chasing losses one, your interpretation there would be the right thing to do is to rectify the situation and force my money to come back to me. I'm going to get my money back right now. That's like the interpretation of the spot. My money's been
Yeah,
taken. I'm going to get it back to make things right. That's the bad
yeah,
interpretation. You know that's bad consciously, but subconsciously you were like all aboard with that interpretation. You
yeah,
were like all in on that interpretation being the right one. That leads to what we call the response process that the mind runs, which in your case was play for 10 hours. That was the right response process to the wrong interpretation. And that is the essence of poker therapy. The fact that the interpretation is the culprit. And if you can change that and truly see and feel differently about the situation, that's when you can run a good response process. So I think reading the book will help you a bit more. And I think like what you did there, what we've done with organizing all of your mental leaks and writing out those diagrams and having a column for each of them is super important. If you guys buy the book, you'll see how to write a misfire diagram for your mental game leaks and how to work on it. Head over to carrotcorner.com to check it out. What have you've only just started reading poker therapy, so back to the topic of this podcast, it wouldn't be fair for me to demand like a full review right now, but any initial impressions or thoughts, or have you read enough of it yet to have any impressions or thoughts?
Yeah, actually, well, from the 2 chapters that I've read, actually, I already think it's gonna help me a lot because, for sure, talking about it's really good. Doing these spreadsheets is pretty good, but I think sometimes just read. Well, I'm a literate person, so sometimes just reading it's gonna be a really nice complement to even understanding the misfire, because even though I understand the misfire now, I still fall into the same trap sometimes. So, and I do feel now that by reading the books is gonna help me much more.
Yeah, and like the first couple of chapters, so what you've been reading about so far are the types of misfire, like the broad
Yeah.
categories of misfire that humans can have. So from things like, the praise and scorn that we talked about,
Hmm.
the surrendering resources, we don't want to surrender resources, things feeling unfair. Like these are what I call the alien world problems, like the respects in which poker is different to the real world. So those sort
Yeah.
of give you they set the scene. That's like why the misfires exist. Then we have types of misfire. We'll go through them really quickly. Survival, right, which is like fight, flight, and
Hmm.
freeze, where you end up like wanting to bash a guy in the face because he stacked you and get your money back. That's fight. Or you want to run away from poker for a week because it hurt you. That's flight. Or you just freeze up because the pot's too stressful. It's a big pot and you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's freeze. Feedback misfires. Oh, ace queen, is a bad hand because I always lose when I 3-bet it. Or that guy bluffed me once, so he's an absolute idiot, kind of thing. Like feedback misfires, taking results orientation too far. Risk assessment, not understanding pot odds. Poker's a really difficult game in the sense that it's counterintuitive, right? Sometimes you have
Yeah.
to make a call, even though you lose 80% of the time, but it's still right to call, so you get 5-1. Skill translation. I studied all day yesterday, and then I've lost today. This is unfair. This guy's a worse player than me, so I can do what I want. I can just bluff him out the pot. Like in life, having way more skill than your opponent does mean that you can just beat the shit out of him at everything. But in poker, it doesn't work like that. He's still entitled to win 45%. Fallibility misfires, thinking that you shouldn't make mistakes and that mistakes are terrible and overreacting to mistakes. Within fallibility misfire category, there's types of misfire like mistake tilt. What I call it, ouch, I should never have, blah blah blah, in the book, like I should never have done that. That's something you used to suffer from as well, right? The mistake tilt, like an intolerance for your own errors.
Yeah, actually, when you're very nitpicky, and you want perfections, it's very tilting to do the incorrect play. Even sometimes
described yourself as a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
As well, so
yeah. So even like yesterday, I bet her hand that I should have check small blind versus big blind, and just during the hand I was like tilted about me because I was like, oh, it's a clear check. You're such a retard.
and that's the bad interpretation, right? That
Yeah.
scorning. We each have our own
Yeah.
inner parent that scorns us and praises us as we do well and do badly. And when that inner parent reacts stupidly and rashly to a mistake that's supposed to happen, that's when we have a problem. It's like if your child, I don't have children and you don't have children, right? So we're probably not the best to talk about this, but if your child does something normal that children do and you react by grabbing them and shaking them and throwing them to the ground or something, that's probably not very good parenting. But we do that to ourselves all the time at the poker table. We make a mistake and we're like, you absolute idiot, you fucking moron, blah blah blah, how can I still make that mistake? And the rewire here, the way we fix this, is to understand that the intolerance interpretation, that it's not acceptable to make that error, is what's wrong. There's a spectrum of errors that we're allowed to make. Maybe the experienced professional can only make 3 blunders a month, 16 big mistakes and 38 small mistakes. Maybe the semi-professional can make 7 blunders and 24 big mistakes and 63 small mistakes, and that's normal. So what you're trying to do is get a bit better than normal, a bit better than average, and cut your mistakes down a little bit.
Yeah.
To strive for some idealistic perfection is a thing that causes that flawed interpretation of, I'm not good enough, I'm an idiot. And when we have that, we lower our self-worth, we lower our standards, and our standards collapse. And that's why when we're in mistake tilt, our self-worth, we've destroyed our own self-worth, we've beaten ourselves up so badly that we no longer care about our own standards and goals, and then everything falls apart, right? That's the next conclusion. Everything falls to pieces. It's very normal when you break it down, and that's what poker therapy does. It breaks down all of the types of misfire, it shows you how to rewire them, and then shows you what kind of roadblocks might exist even when you've done your rewiring. So it's the journey, and it's just like coaching. But anyway, so yeah, carrotcorner.com for that one, guys. Check it out. What about like your goals going forward then? Someone like where do you want to be a year from now?
A year from now, I would like to be at 500 Zoom.
Cool.
That would be my goals. Think it's not impossible. There's going to be a lot of mental game work to do, but think I might be not that far, so it's a bit encouraging. I see a lot of progress lately, so this is where I would like to be.
I think you're getting there. Like you've gone from a losing 10 NL player to a winning 100 NL player in the last 18 months, and that's not slow progress for a poker player at all these days in the modern climate. So
yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you do long-term coaching. This is why I always say to people, coaching is a long-term thing. You're not going to book 5 sessions and suddenly become a crusher. You can address a lot of your serious leaks and boost your win rate in 5 sessions, but to really stand a chance of making an ascent through the stakes from a complete beginner to a crusher, you need to have long-term guidance, whether that comes in the form of coaching or training materials or courses or friends or mentors or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been great having you on the podcast. It's always good to have my oldest students on the show, because they know the most about my approach to coaching, and they're usually the guys that have made the most progress. So wish you all the best of luck in the future, and I'll see you in Montreal, right? That'll be fun.
Yeah, you will be able to visit the beautiful city. Actually, it really looks like Glasgow, so you will not be too.
I'll feel at home.
Yeah, you feel at home. Actually, it really looked like Glasgow. I've said it like.
Are we gonna eat maple syrup and all that kind of stuff? Like what do Canadians do? Like I gave you haggis when you came here. What do Canadians?
What's the Canadians? I don't even know. It's like we're eating like North American foods. It's we do have a lot of great restaurants, so I might bring you to one of those if you're if you're gentle with me in the next few sessions.
We'll say it depends if you do your homework, and or if you decide that you're going to only play poker in the bathroom now because you went on a heater. Like if you do that, then I'm not going to be nice when I come over. So no fickle results are into play. We'll be fine. On a serious note though, I've been saying to my girlfriend that she should come with me and we can go to restaurants. I think she's a bit intimidated about just being in a house with a bunch of poker nerds for a whole weekend, and she imagines that we don't ever wash, or we just sit around stinking and eating like KFC or something like that. But it's not the case.
But I could bring my girlfriend also, so she could enjoy the retreat also.
That's the idea. Let's get everyone to bring someone that doesn't play poker, and they can form their own club while we're all doing our thing. Or maybe that'd be a bit distracting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we have a tilt room? I watched this thing ages ago where they had a tilt room, so when things went wrong they had all this stuff they could smash up with baseball bats and
well, we do have those in Montreal actually, a place where you can pay to smash mostly whatever you want. You can throw cutlery or I don't know how to say, I forgot the word. The thing you eat on.
Plate, crockery, plates and bowls and stuff
plates,
like that. Yeah. That would, like ceramics, that would be really satisfying. Yeah, like that must be why Canadians are so calm, right? Because you go into these tilt rooms and smash up ceramics on a professional basis, like
we can throw axe. We have places where you can throw axe for fun.
Wow.
It's like in Vegas when you can shoot guns, but instead of that, it's an axe.
An axe is way more fulfilling. I mean, a gun, all you're doing is sitting there pressing a button. It's not like you're actually expending any physical energy. But yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's set up a tilt room. Let's have like a support network for the partners of poker players. Let's do the whole thing. Montreal, what did you say, 23rd to 25th?
Well, 23rd to 25th or 13 or 15. We'll have to check, but it's going to be mid-March.
Okay, guys, get in touch with me if you're in Canada or North America, or even if you fancy flying out there for that weekend. We will take on as many people as we can for this coaching retreat. admin@carrotcorner.com, characters on Skype. And yeah, Poker Therapy is now available at carrotcorner.com. I'm super stoked. I'm finally done. I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed now. I mean, it's always the run up to the book, right? You just end up jaded and pissed off with it. You probably know yourself from doing all the like PhDs and stuff and writing massive papers and whatnot. But
yeah.
It can be draining, but we're there. So check it out. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Email me.
Congratulations again for your book.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'll have you back on in a little while. Maybe just before, maybe even over Christmas or something. We'll have you back on and we'll talk more about the retreat and we'll try and promote it even more. And we'll see how you're doing.
Yeah, we could do an history review if you want.
Yeah, we could do hands and pimp out the retreat and stuff like that. I'm always about like, hands, whatever. What are we promoting? Here? Right, man.
I want to talk about poker.
yeah, you want to talk about the details and I want to just get people's money. So, yeah, great. Guys, thank you so much. And if you want to come on the Carrot Poker podcast, do let me know as well. I'll be taking on new guests, students, whatever it is you think is unique about you as a poker person. Especially if you're female, we need more females on the podcast. We never get any of them. Even if you're just female and you're really boring, still come on the podcast. I mean, it'll still get views, right? So that's fine. But interesting ones, even more. Right, I'm going to stop offending everyone and sign off for now, man. Have a good day and thanks again.
Too.
Okay, take it easy.
Bye-bye.